Hey guys, Brian Stevens here with Mortgage Shots. How we doing today? I hope everyone's doing good. Hey, listen, we're going to talk about a bunch of things today. We're going to talk a little bit about NAR, what's been taking place with them. We're going to actually talk about the mortgage industry, what's taking place with you, the synergy that is in between you, the fabric that holds it together, the seams that tear us apart. We're going to talk about that as well. So that's a good thing. And a bunch of little anecdotal stories that I think are going to kind of help us get through the day, the week, and the month. So anyways, it's wonderful to see you all. Now listen, if you like what we do on a regular basis, just do me a favor, go to mortgageshots.com, which is right above, mortgageshots.com, or down below, and go hit subscribe. When you do that, what it's going to do is it's going to take you to our homepage where you'll get our 5 to 7 minute video every day talking about the mortgage industry, what's taking place, and things that we could do to make little improvements to our life. But most importantly, we'll put a little sales nourishment and we'll sprinkle it with hopefully some happiness, because boy, we can use it in these days. So, all right, well, let's just jump into everything right now. So, under the heading and in the spirit of the whole idea that if nothing changes, nothing changes. Have you heard that before? In other words, if we keep going on with the doldrums and what we do on a day-by-day basis, our business is going to look very similar to how it looked yesterday. The only thing that's going to make a change to our business is how we change ourselves. Now, the industry will constantly be in flux, where it'll get better or it'll get worse, though I do dare say that in your business getting better or getting worse by components outside of your control are not necessarily better or worse, because you could have what would be perceived to be down markets, and you could have great years depending on what you do. You could have great years by industry standards, and you could have a down year based on how you perform. We really have two components here, you see. They're the yin and the yang of our industry, the polar opposites, the antitheses of each other. We have us and we have it. Now, when it is doing good, that means we have a lot of inventory. We've got a low rate environment. There's probably some refinances in there. People are buying. People are exuberant. Inflation is down. Rates look pretty good, and everybody's happy about things. So we have an extraordinary amount of interest and demand for what we're doing. And if we have an extraordinary amount of supply for what we're doing, for all of those components, by the way, low rates create the supply for that refinance market, right? So there is a supply and demand with interest rates. The low rate creates the supply, creates the demand, and then the supply is by the industry. We saw this just a couple of years ago when the mortgage industry had, we could do like $3 trillion a year in business, and we did $6 trillion. The question then became, how do we get $6 trillion through a $3 trillion funnel? And yet we did that. So you could have low demand and high supply, which is what we saw back in 2008. We can have high demand and low supply, which is the antithesis, what we're seeing right now. But in these great markets, both our supply and our demand are elevated, and when they're elevated, things look good for everybody. Now, this is the market that we're going into, and there's a number of analytics that are going to support this fact. But here's the thing. We are going to have higher supply and higher demand, but what we also know we're going to have is fewer people in the industry vying for that business. Fewer people vying for that business means that every one of us gets a slightly bigger cut of the pie. Those who understand and can read the tea leaves of where the market is going are going to disproportionately benefit. That's the market that we're in right now. Now, the one curveball that we have, or the black swan that we have, that unforeseeable event, is everything that's taking place in the real estate community right now. And I want to talk to you about that because I think the answers are a lot more close to home than you think. Now, do I think the whole thing was a snow job in the real estate industry? Absolutely it was. Do we think that there's problems with it and we haven't seen the end of it? You bet your butt. But that doesn't mean that we can't make appropriate decisions right now. Okay, so the first thing that I want to cover is reports came out just recently that said 44% of all single-family homes purchased were from private investors in 2023. And I thought to myself, boy, this is a bigger number than what I thought it was going to be. I mean, a vastly bigger number than what I thought it was going to be. Now, since this has come out, and this is less than 24 hours ago, there's been a number of reports that have come out, and they're basically saying that this isn't true. Well, hold on, this isn't even close to true. All right, so on the same day, we get 44% of all single-family homes that were purchased by private investors, and private investors is not a good name. That means Jane and Joe, average American, who are looking at buying a house and realizing that American dream, especially those, the Gen Zers and the Gen Xers, well, I mean, they're going to have a harder time getting their foot into the game to where they can start to build that equity to where maybe a couple of generations down the road that they're going to sit in a position that's going to look a heck of a lot more like the baby boomers of today. So the question then becomes, and by the way, it doesn't really matter what the outcome is, it matters what we do with this information. But 44%, nearly 1 in 2 single-family homes that were purchased, and we know that we're building fewer than we need. We know all the numbers, all the analytics, 6 million homes too few of where we need to be right now. We know the new home builders are doing a better job. We know our housing starts are up. We know our permits are up. We know our completions are up when it comes to new inventory. But we also know that they're not where they need to be. We also know that their numbers look very similar to where they were in 1982. I want you to think about that for a while. You have new home builders building about the same amount of houses today that they did back in 1982, which is going to be 42 and a half years ago. Well, 42 and a half years ago, we had 277 million people in this country. Now we have 370 million people in this country. So we have a third more of the population in the same new homes being built on a yearly basis. Okay, well, we know that new family formations, that's where, a couple of folks will get together and decide to form their own family and just, fly the coop from mom and dad. Well, when they fly the coop from mom and dad, they're going to go get their own house. Well, we have more of those today than we did 40-something years ago. And so what that does is it creates a shortage for us. But even with that said, we can kind of look at the road that we've been on for the past 6 months, and it's been, as the Grateful Dead once sang, they waxed and waned so poetically, Bob Weir, Jerry Garcia, and the boys over there, when they said what a long, strange trip it's been, and it certainly has been. But 44, is that number real? Is it not real, and do we care? Wall Street investors haven't bought 44% of the homes this year. Despite what you've seen on social media, this housing myth is easy, absolutely easy to disprove. And here's the graph that they're going to show you. Now, this is from one of the most reputable sites that you're going to find to disprove the 44% number. They say, well, all you have to do is look at the iBuyers, who I believe to be some of the most insidious folks out there. The iBuyers are buying about 2% of homes. Now, the reason why I like to bring this up to you is because iBuyers are going to be the biggest form of competition against real estate agents. They're going to be the ones who are going to try to fill the void when real estate agents don't come up with the creative solutions to the predicament right now. If that happens, it's the iBuyers who are going to fill that space, and that number of 2% is going to go up to 22%, then 42%, then 62%. And this is exactly what Wall Street wants to have happen. It's worth pointing out, though, I want you to just kind of focus on that blue line for a second. If we go down here to 2016, what do you see? Well, in 2016 and all the years before that, there was no such thing as an iBuyer. Now, I can tell you this with certainty for myself because I remember when the first Atari came out. The very first Atari, and before the very first Atari, there was nothing. Video games, they did not exist, right? Well, the iBuyer, because the technology wasn't there, didn't exist prior to 2016. Again, follow the blue line. Back in 2020, right around COVID, we saw an enormous uptick in iBuyer activity. This right here is kind of like the government handout that we got during COVID. Remember when we took out $4 trillion and printed a whole bunch of money? Did you realize, by the way, side note, that there is 30% more money in circulation today than prior to COVID? 30% more. That means from that one fell swoop from the Federal Reserve to give out a bunch of money to people for not going to work, we discredited the value of the U.S. dollar by about 30%. Well, this is the same type of thing that happened. We saw this enormous uptick that took place here and this massive and immediate drop-off in the iBuyer platform. Now, if we look at any real estate analytics and Realtor analytics, we're not going to see anything that looks anything like that whatsoever. But we saw that drop, and here's the reason why, and this is why I really want to warn the industry about what's going to happen in the future. If it's been predictive and predictable in the past, then it's going to be predictive and predictable in the future. If we had certain things that we could figure out that caused that crash of this iBuying platform that was backed by billions of dollars, then if that happens again, we would be naive to think that we were going to have an outcome that was going to be any different than that. Well, what happened here is the reason we saw this massive uptick that outpaced what real estate agents were doing. iBuying platforms were picking up market share. Though small, they were picking up market share, and then everything kind of fell apart for them, right? Well, the reason why it fell apart is because they didn't have the legacy or the infrastructure in place in order to maintain it. When the market got tough, all the backers, all the billion-dollar backers behind all those iBuying platforms, they looked at the market and said, you want to know what? I think we're over-leveraged on all the properties that we have right now, and we need to sell them. We need to mitigate our risk. We need to marginalize our risk. We need to hedge our risk, and we need to dump everything at all costs. That's what that drop is. And though we're having a conversation about do investors have 44% of the market, we can learn a lot more about what's really taking place if we sit back and look at this for a moment. So we know those who are going to replace real estate agents, when they found anything that looked like adversity, they all tucked tail and ran. We are going to mitigate our risk. That's exactly what they did. And they sold all their inventory off at the same time. They took massive losses. I think at one point, Zillow stock was down over 75% of its market cap at one point. But then what happened is all those Wall Street folks decided to get there because nobody likes losing billions of dollars that they invested on trillions of dollars of investments. And that's exactly what the United States housing market is. So what they did is they doubled back down and they started to come back. Now, you see this down point here? This down point here was when the fintech companies, the iBuying platforms, figured out that real estate agents, truly knew that the real estate community was a much stronger adversary than they had ever thought before. Now, there was a lot of arrogance that went up in this bubble. We got a lot of money. We're going to pick up market share. Look at us. We're killing it. And the minute adversity hits, they fall apart. Didn't happen with the realtors out there. We're used to working broke, aren't we? We live in the world of adversity, don't we? But you see down here at this trough, at the lowest point for the iBuying platforms, they realized something. And they said, oh boy, if we want to control the multi-trillion-dollar industry, which is the United States housing market, we have to have a much more complete, all-inclusive approach to this whole thing. And that's exactly what they did. Now, how do we create a much more all-inclusive, comprehensive approach to taking over what real estate agents have? We can't do it in a fair fight. And as one of my friends said, his name is Eric, I'm not going to say the last name, but very tongue-in-cheeky, he said, I don't even want to be in a game where I can't cheat. And that's exactly where Wall Street's at. So, I don't know, maybe we create false narratives about what real estate agents actually do, which is charge more money than we're hearing being paraded around right now. Maybe we file multiple lawsuits. Maybe we let this industry of tort lawyers go up against them and strip mine them of their wealth in a model that's worked for all these years. And let's say we bring them to their knees, and because we know that their trade association doesn't have the gumption or the foresight to go ahead and come up with any strong solutions, well, then I think that everybody will vacate. We'll run around like a bunch of chickens with our heads cut off. And then in that moment, even though our platform is inferior, and even though our platform costs more money, and even though, as you've seen here, it's failed before, we will then be able to go in because our plan of comprehensive annihilation against the real estate agent community will be completed. We're seeing it right before our eyes. And look at what's happened with their market share. It's gone up. Now, here's the other part, getting back to our original question, because I was in the weeds on this whole thing. Are 44% of the properties bought right now, are they being bought by institutionalized investors? We had a report that came out and said, yeah, that's exactly what's going on. And immediately, as if it was almost anticipated, because we have to keep the correct narrative going, we had a whole bunch of articles that came out and said that's a bunch of hogwash. In fact, this article that I'm quoting right here basically said this is the easiest, dumbest thing I've ever seen in my life, and I can't believe we're even having this conversation. Let me show you what's going on with institutional investors, and I can prove to you very easily that it's not 44%. All I have to do is pull up this graph that says iBuyers are only buying 2%, and institutional investors are only buying 2.5%. Hell, these guys only represent 4.5% the industry. They're not 44%. They're barely 4%. But that's not the whole story, is it? Let me ask you this. What's going on over in China right now? What's going on with all their real estate, commercial and residential real estate? Where's all that international money going right now? Have you seen the properties being blown up in China? Literally. Sky-rise buildings being blown up because they can't finish them. Do you realize that the largest real estate construction firm in the world, Evergrande, who's over in China, biggest in the world by far, they were building simultaneously at one point the equivalent of over two-thirds of Manhattan, the entire island of Manhattan, at one point just a couple of short months ago. And now they're putting dynamite charges in those buildings and blowing them up because they couldn't afford to finish them. Because how they were collecting money on those buildings from international investors is not how it happens over here in the United States. You might say they run a little fast and loose with their money over there. But now all these institutional investors who basically were like deers with their eyes, caught in the high beams of the oncoming train, didn't know what to do. So a safe place to go ahead and drop your money is going to be over in the United States. How many international investors that are not institutional investors are not represented in these two curves? Furthermore, if you've been following anything that's been going on with the Airbnb investor, the 2 and 3 home investor, did you know that 56% of all investments are people who own fewer than 2 properties? So nothing that's being represented in this graph is half of the industry. I ask you, what of the foreign investor? I ask you, what of the commercial investor? Because commercial real estate in our country and the rest of the world is just in shambles right now. How many of these groups are not falling in on this graph? I'm talking about the Airbnb investors, which is over half of all investors out there. How many of those are out there? And the answer is there's a lot. And the reason I say this is because it almost seems as if there might be something of an agenda that's taking place with some of these articles. Now, here's another graph, by the way, from the same article, that says here's where investment is right now. Overall investor share of the purchase market. Now, we've just gone from 4.5%, and boy, we've already made our way up to 30, 32, 33%. Now, how do you feel about this? I'm starting to think that maybe that 44%, that 42%, or whatever it was we were looking at, that 44% is looking a hell of a lot more accurate right now. And these are both graphs that were drawn on the same day. Now, do we believe that there's a manipulation in the narrative, or do we think the number is actually a little bit higher? And if we think that's higher, it would support my opinion that institutional investors are looking at 25% of the United States GDP, which happens to be the United States housing market, 25 to 35%, which represents the United States GDP, which represents somewhere between, I think, 35% of the world's GDP, the world's economy. We are the big silverback gorilla in the room, the United States housing market. And yes, Wall Street has done a really piss poor job up until this point to control it. So does it make more sense that there could be a systematic attack on what's taking place right now, where the winners is Wall Street and the loser is middle-class America? This is what they're telling you, yet this is what's really going on. This is what they're telling you, yet this is what's really going on. Now, the reason I threw this one in here, because you saw it a couple of times, I just thought this was really fun. Today, on March 21st, after everything that's transpired over the past week, I see an article that comes out, and it's just so funny. These folks are going back to the well for a real estate agent because it seems like you're a bottomless pit of opportunity to strip mine your wealth from you. I've been talking about buying Zillow leads for the longest time ever. They've just been your competition. You're basically financing the construction of the fortifications of your enemy. So this, again, was just pulled today. The 6 best places for real estate agents to buy leads. Market Leader, Zerply, I don't even know what the offers, Catalyze, Zillow, and Z-Buyers. So before we get into should you or should you not spend your hard-earned money buying the phone number of your client back, which is really what we should be talking about, but let's just say we can't even get close to that conversation right now. Let me ask you this. If you choose to take your hard-earned money and spend it buying leads from a platform like this or about this, where you are financing the fortifications of those who intend you harm, what are you going to do with it? How are you going to write a contract right now where you feel is going to be compliant, is not going to put you or your broker in harm's way? Now, we already know what the MLSs have said. They said, keep us out of this. All we want is your money. We're not looking for your support. We know what your association has said. Your association has said, the only thing we're not going to protect is the only thing you want us to protect, and that's your paycheck. That is no longer going to be protected. The only thing you are paying us dues for, that's the only thing we're not going to protect. So that's gone. Now, NAR has told us exactly what you should do. NAR says we are going to advise every multiple listing system that we work with, every association, every state and county association that we work with, and all of those that we can influence. We're going to influence all of them and say we are collectively out of the commission and the income game. That's what they said. And they said you could go ahead and talk about your commissions. We think commissions are a really great idea because we've always said that, and we admit no fault. We admit no fault. We paid $416 million. We've changed all of our technology platforms. Everything we've done screams guilt, but we admit no fault. Now, you, the ones who are paying us your dues, you can go ahead and figure out how you want to go ahead and collect your money. You're just not doing it on our platforms anymore because we're sick of getting sued. Because over here at the National Association of Realtors, we're all about making money, not representing you. Their statement, I've covered this ad nauseum for the past couple of days. And because this marketing ploy has been so effective for so many years, it's been hiding in plain sight that even today, after everything that has come down, there are articles that are coming in that look exactly like this that say, you know what, you could still go give all of these guys your money. Which, by the way, every one of these platforms right now is developing technology to replace you, every single one of them. But if you want, give them your money. And I guess we should throw it out there because you've done it before. What's the old saying? Screw me once, shame on you. Screw me twice, shame on me. What about screw me 3 times? Or screw me 4 times, or screw me 5 times. At that point, it's just like, hey, just go back to the well. Go back to the goose and keeps laying eggs. And that's exactly how we find ourselves with how analytics are being manipulated right now. Again, I've pulled everything you're looking at today. I do find this one pretty interesting, and frankly, I completely and totally disagree with it. The NAR settlement may disrupt mortgage partner agent programs. Now, the proposed settlement, which would also require buyers' agents to enter into written agreements with their clients, could make it riskier to offer such incentives to consumers since it would be harder to know in advance how much a buyer would actually be willing to pay for their agent. Here's how this whole one goes. You've got companies like you've got companies like Rocket. Rocket has their own real estate firms out there. Rocket is going to generate leads, and those leads are then going to be handed out to their loan officers, and those loan officers are going to take these leads that do not have a real estate agent, and they're going to say, if you work with my agent, we will, on your mortgage, go ahead and give you incentives where you otherwise wouldn't get them. Now, the real estate agent makes money. The Rocket, the wholly owned or subsidiary Rocket real estate company is going to make money. The Rocket loan officer is going to make money. The Rocket loan officer doesn't mind giving up incentives because he's going to make money on the real estate commissions. But here's where the problem comes in. So I'm Rocket. it and I go ahead and I spend my money and my resources to go ahead and get this buyer. I procure this lead who buys a house. I drop it off with one of my Rocket real estate agents. Then my Rocket real estate agent shows that person a house where it says there's 0 commissions. Well, Rocket spent a whole bunch of money leveraging, hedging the idea that they were going to make money on that commission. But now for some reason, the number that Rocket needed to make this whole program profitable disappears. And frankly, this is the reason why they dumped a program just a couple of weeks ago. The parent companies of some of the big mortgage lenders, including Rocket Mortgage, Loan Depot, and Better, also operate as real estate brokerages that send leads, unrepresented buyers who have qualified to take out a mortgage or who are shopping for a lender to another real estate brokerage in exchange for a referral fee. Aha. Boy, I don't know. I mean, I'm looking at these real estate tests that I've been taking and all these, all this stuff that I've done before. And I don't know about you, but this screams RESPA violation to me. Maybe it is, maybe it isn't. What do you guys think about it? Now, I mean, are the Rockets of the world big enough to get in on the iBuying, the fintech, the fintech solution to the real estate problem that we have created? Maybe they are, maybe they're not. But again, this is where I get back to my whole thing. What are you going to do? Where is a real estate agent going to get their commission? I love this picture and I'm going to take credit for it. I put it together. This is the new protocols for the real estate agent commission. Now, if we go to NAR, we go straight to the horse's mouth and ask them what we should do. Well, I'm just going to paraphrase it so I can just kind of stay on target here. They said we're out of the commission game. Our MLSs won't have it. Our boards won't be talking about it. We still think that you should get a commission because, of course, they have to say that even though they've abandoned you. But what they're saying is you got to go figure it out on your own. I just had I had a loan officer in one of my groups I was talking with today, and she said, bring light to people, shed light on people, bring light to things. And I thought it was interesting because when we put this in the context of commissions here, what was more transparent than putting what commissions were going to be paid into your multiple listing system for absolutely everybody to see? Put them on Zillow. I don't care. Put them everywhere. A real estate agent should be proud of what they're making. But what NAR said is, no, we can't do that anymore. Now, I know that we have a June or a July deadline, but all of this infrastructure is in place. This isn't going to wait. This is going to be one of the few instances where the changes made based on where our compliance situation is going to happen faster than when the solution demands it, than the regulation demands it, when the lawsuit demands it. It's going to happen sooner. It's happening right now. So what they're saying is take it away from the place where everybody can see it and go take that to the back alleys. So you can go ahead and negotiate your commissions, but do it out of the sight or the knowledge of the National Association of Realtors in your brokerage. Now, let me ask you just a very simple question, a broad question outside of real estate. If you're going to find fraud, is it going to happen in the light or the dark? Is it going to happen through transparency or no transparency? And I think the answer is pretty clear. Yet this, my friends, is where we're at right now with real estate commissions. So the answer is pretty straightforward. Agents, NAR is saying, our brokerages are saying, yes, go get your commission. But when you get your commission, just go ahead and have that back alley conversation with that listing agent and figure out what that commission is going to look like so they can go back and twist the arm of their seller. Boy, that's great. Probably not too trackable either. I mean, when everything's on the MLS, they could go ahead and track it. When NAR ran all the MLSs, they could track all the commissions that were offered. In fact, they did track all the commissions that were offered. Then what they realized is 6% was never an average. And this information has been readily available to all the lawyers who are suing you and all the media outlets who choose not to look at it and are running with the much more flamboyant, exaggerated version of the narrative, which happens to be categorically untrue. Here's a bigger question I think real estate agents should be asking themselves right now. Okay, so now we can go ahead, according to the National Association of Realtors, where I am a constituent of. They are my representative voice. They are the oldest trade association in the world, as they like to tell you. They're the biggest in the world right now. Not anymore. They told me to go negotiate my commissions. They never said anything about what I should charge. They never said there was anything wrong with what I did charge. They never said anything wrong about the lies that people are perpetrating right now about what I never, in fact, did charge. Now, I'm going to tell you this right now. I know a real estate brokerage that's local. I think I spoke about this, but if not, just indulge me for a moment. This brokerage, which is a very large one, they said all the new agents who work for our company, because we're big enough, we can go ahead and say this, you're going to charge a 6% commission if you get a listing. That is non-negotiable. If you're with our brokerage, you're charging 6%. And frankly, I have nothing wrong with that. Now, what I have wrong with is that what this brokerage also said is, if you've been here for a long time and if you've established yourself as somebody who actually produces a lot of business and you make our company money, you can charge 5%. So what they did is they cobbled the newer agents, forced them into a 6% commission, and said that the seasoned agent can only charge 5%. This is right in my backyard. Now, I don't know if I would deem that to be illegal. I would deem it to be a tad bit unethical, certainly greedy beyond a point. But hey, the person who came up with this strategy is a real estate estate lawyer. So who knows better than him, right? But here's the point. Let's assume that you know somebody, you're watching this right now, and you have a real estate brokerage, and that brokerage did something that was, by my standards and your standards, to be illegal. They demanded that everything was a 6% commission no matter what. I don't give a shit. You're charging 6% if you're working over here, and that's that. In fact, I'm so mad about this, you're charging 7%. We want more than whatever. It doesn't matter, okay? Now, I'm a consumer. I go into that community, and I go talk with somebody about listing this house. By the way, I did this with my in-laws up in North Bend, Washington. Beautiful suburb of Seattle. House is worth something to the tune of $800,000. We had an agent. We did an interview with her, and we said, hey, so how much? She goes, this house is going to go on the market today. It's going to sell in 2 days. It's going to sell $30,000 or some crazy number above the sales price. This thing will be in contract in a couple of days, and this thing will be done and sold in 15 days. I said, okay, great. What's your commission? She goes, 6%, and I am not moving an inch off it. I go, this thing's going to sell it for $800,000 and you want $50,000 for a couple of days of work? I'm like, you're out of your freaking mind. I'm not going to pay you $50,000. My in-laws went and found somebody who did it for 4.5%, 5%. Oh my God, how dare you? You're part of this industry, Brian. You know better than that. Well, hold on a second here. They still made $40,000 for 10 days work. I would take that under any circumstance. I'd do almost anything for that. But this is what hot markets do. Hot markets where properties sell themselves, this is kind of how the whole thing goes down, right? But let's just assume that scenario. I chose a better option for my family. Well, Brian, you know the industry. Yeah, I do know the industry. But here's what I don't know. I don't know the industry of the banana import-export industry. I don't know a damn thing about bananas. Outside of the fact that occasionally I think a banana tastes pretty good, but more importantly, my daughter loves them. She likes 9 things in the world to eat, and a banana happens to be one. Bananas, from a father's standpoint, I know those things, they come pre-packaged. I don't need to wrap them in nothing. I can take a banana and I could put it in a paper bag, put it in her lunch every day. She's got a banana she likes, and I'm happy because that thing's probably not going to turn brown, and I'm good. So bananas serve a purpose in my life, but I don't know anything about the import-export business on bananas. Nothing. But think about this. Okay, so I go down to the Nugget, which, by the way, overprices everything. It's a grocery store, which is really, it's hoity-toity, you know, one of the top-end ones. It smells good when you go in there. They got all the pre-made food that you can get. So I can go into there, and I'm like, oh, okay, so bananas are $4.50 a pound. Again, knowing nothing about the business, I'm thinking to myself, using these powerful, persuasive tools that I refer to as deductive reasoning, and I'm thinking, the Nugget's a pretty expensive place. Don't know a lot about bananas. Seems like a lot of money to get 5 bananas to spend $8. Those 5 bananas for $8 are going to cost me a little more than $1 a piece. My daughter's lunch at the end of the day is going to cost me $4 a day. Considering inflation right now, and a hamburger over McDonald's is going to cost me $37, I'm thinking that banana's still a pretty good deal. But I don't know. But these are my abilities of deductive reasoning. Now, I'm also saying in the back of my mind, I could go over to Lucky's, which is a dump, and I could probably go buy that same banana for $1 less per pound. I could probably save $2 full on those bananas. Get the same goddamn bananas, came off the same trees from the same city, got the same big old spiders and poisonous snakes that you might run into every now. I don't know. Don't know anything about bananas. But I have a pretty good inclination that I could save a couple dollars if I chose to do that. What I chose to do is I chose to take the more expensive bananas because that was convenient for me. That was my decision as a consumer. Now, the question I have for you, did the Nugget do anything wrong by charging more for bananas? Did Lucky's do anything wrong by charging less for bananas? No, they picked their price, and I as a consumer made my decision. This is what we call choice. This is what the fair market is all about, choice. I could have paid that 6% commission. I chose to pay 4.5% commission. Yes, of course, it's a different price point, but the principle's the same, right? What about gas? 60% of inflation. I just saw this a couple of days ago. 60% of inflation is the cost of fuel consumption and how it affects everything. Trucking, moving, shipping, driving, all of this stuff. I have a choice. Now, why doesn't everybody go get their gas over at Costco? It's going to be cheaper for you, but you don't do it. Does that mean Chevron should be sued? You're all going, yeah, sue them. I mean, not for charging more. You don't have to pay it. That's the point. You don't have to. It's a choice. And the unintended consequence of what's taking place right now is like now I have the ability of a certain amount of deductive reasoning if I'm buying books, if I'm buying shoes, if I'm buying bananas, if I'm buying gas, and even if I'm buying a house. And the result of these lawsuits just made it harder for Joe Buyer 101 to come up and make a reasonable decision for himself. Because there are a lot of things about buying houses that are not like buying bananas. And I want to know how to maximize my ability in that circumstance. And in order to do that, I'm going to need to have a real estate agent who does it. So think about this. No one's talking about this. How much money could a realtor make? I'll tell you this. You made this whole thing even harder. I was a real estate agent. Right now, I'd say I'm charging 8%. I'm 4 and 4 across the board. Because according to this lawsuit, there's nothing wrong with this, which I find wildly ironic. I'm going to charge 4 for me and 4 for... then I'm going to get the consent from the person whose house I'm listing. And the reason I'm going to get that consent is I'm going to tell them, if you don't give a commission to the person who brings the winning bid, it's the winning bid. It's not the buyer. Do you want a winning lottery ticket or a losing lottery ticket? Winning lottery ticket's worth something. Losing lottery ticket ain't worth the paper it's printed on. I'm choosing the agent who brought the winning bid to my property. Am I going to bring that person a commission? You bet your ass I'm going to. One, thank you. I appreciate it. You just put more money in my pocket. It's kind of like tipping a food server. You know, what is it, 28% now you got to tip? For actually ordering my food, getting my own salt, pepper, and ketchup, getting my own drink, busting my own table. I still got to pay, 25%? Whatever it is we have to pay now. Why aren't we going after that? Go after that. I'll bet you this right now, seriously. Side note, how much money would you spend on a real estate agent's commission over the course of a 5-year period when you own that? How long do you own a house for? On average, you own a house for about 7 years, okay? So you're going to pay that buyer's agent for a house that you're going to live in that's going to make you a shit ton of money. You're going to pay that agent, let's make it $12,000. Over the next 7 years, how much money are you going to spend tipping people 28%, 25%? How much money? I spend a couple of bucks every day over at Starbucks. I do that 5 days a week. Okay, now I do that over 7 years. How much am I spending? Went out to like the best Indian food I've ever had in my life. The bill was like $80 for me and my wife because that's just how much shit costs now. So I had to tip 14, 15 bucks there. You got to eat 2-3 days a week, whatever it is. I'll bet you this. I'll bet you your average consumer spends more money tipping in the service industry than they will paying a real estate commission over the same period of time. If you want to help consumers, go ahead and attack the food industry and the amount of tips that we have to give right now. That would actually make more sense. And that's nothing in there is making that consumer any money. You're just paying $9 for a cup of coffee that you can make at your house for 35 cents. And when I say $9, I know $9. Having a conversation with my wife. Oh my God, somebody ordered a drink over here and this thing was $9. Think about it. Well, Brian, you're saying what I know you're saying. Well, that's absurd. Of course it's absurd. But the absurdity doesn't die with my analogy. The absurdity is, it's kind of like if you've ever read, and if you haven't, you should, Jonathan Swift, back in the, I think it was the late 1800s, he wrote a short essay called A Modest Proposal. And the Modest Proposal was a story that he wrote about the effectiveness of eating baby human beings for a living. That's something crazy like that. And of course he was making a point by being absurd. And we learned from Swift's Modest Proposal that absurdity is a great tool in order to convey a point. So I just gave you a point about bananas. I just gave you a point about what you're tipping with coffee, both of which happen to be 100% factually true, but yes, they're absurd, intentionally absurd. And I hope the logic from your point of view goes ahead and it just goes over to the real estate scenario and you realize the absurdity here, but also I want you to see the logic of the whole thing. So how much money can an agent charge? If you listen to NAR, as much as you want. Your commission's not what the problem, it's the direction in which you get it. So I say charge more, and then make sure you can tell that seller and tell that buyer why you absolutely deserve it, because you're an agent for life. You're going to be there it's not just about selling your house, it's about you buying your house. It's about in the down years, me coming to you and talking to you about the absurdities of the insurance industry and how you need to have a different plan, different coverage, more coverage. You need umbrella policies, because that whole thing is just coming off the rails right now. It's because when things happen in the appraisal industry, it's because when values go down, because when rates go up, I'm going to be that person that's going to have this answer for you. I got your back covered. I'm charging more. Why wouldn't you? And the thing is people we know are willing to pay for value if they feel they're getting that value. How do I know this? Because I just saw somebody who paid $9 for a cup of coffee and $3.44 for a pound of bananas. And yes, that does convey. I know because there's a 55-year-old guy, I've said this a million times, there's a 55-year-old guy who just went and bought a $120,000 Corvette, all financed on an interest rate of 18%, who makes $75,000 a year, and he bought that Corvette because, God damn it, he deserves it. We're consumers. If you have a feeling, a belief, a value, you're going to go ahead and do it. Well, Brian, I'm not charging 8%. I think you're being crazy right now, and I don't really believe you think that. Okay, well, maybe you don't think that. But how about this? Why don't we just take this? Can we come to common ground on it? Then why don't you charge what you think is fair market value for your services? Can we do that at least? And if you think you're 2.5%, and if you think you're 3%, you better have your talking points, but you go ahead and charge that too. Oh, I don't know if I want to cover this one right now. But this just kind of reminds me of, do you remember this a few years back? I mean, it's just everything got so crazy. And it's always been this way in our industry. It just seems like Ragan Rule after Ragan Rule is just unintended consequences are crazy. Do you remember this a couple of years ago when Wells Fargo came out and said, okay, we're only doing loans for minorities now. We're done. Which I think would be a HOPA and a HMDA and a violation by any stretch of the imagination. And yet they did this. Why? because absurdity has taken over logic. Now, the good news here, affordable housing got a boost by the housing passage of the Tax Relief Act. We talked about this. President Biden talked about this at the State of the Union address. Oh, by the way, we're going to talk about some fun stuff. We're just talking about absurdities right now and having fun with this. The United States House of Representatives announced the passage of H.R. 7024, the Tax Relief for American Families and Workers Act of 2024. My God, nothing sounds more patriotic than that. If Toby Keith were here, he'd write a song about it. But boy, the Tax Relief, the Tax Relief for American Families and Workers Act of 2024, it sounds like the greatest thing in the world. Okay, so what's going to happen? We're going to enhance a low-income housing tax credit. Sounds good to me. We're going to support working families with an enhanced child tax credit, increase the maximum credit per child from $1,600 to $2,000 for 2025. Yahoo! Wish I could have it now. Oh, wait. Adjusting for inflation in 2024? Well, that means we're going to get nothing. So you're going to increase it by $400. Let me ask you this. Real estate agents, lenders out there, is $400 in a tax credit annually for your clients, is that going to get them into a house right now? When your average client makes $42,000 a year and the average price of a property, even in Mississippi, Arkansas, North Dakota, love all you states. But let's be honest here. We could throw Oklahoma, Kansas, like a lot of these. Listen, can they buy a $442,000 house on their income? And the answer is no. And a $400 tax credit actually sounds more mean than anything. They're going to expand innovation and competitiveness with pro-growth economic policies like R&D and expensing. That sounds like a tax hole. That sounds like a money pit to me. But who knows? Maybe this will be the one after 70 years it works. They're going to build up Main Street by cutting red tape and rebuilding communities struck by disasters with tax relief. I don't know. I'd kind of like to do something about the natural disasters. I live out here in California. We don't even call it summer anymore. We just call it fire season. Here's what we have. We have like 3 of those big jets, like 737s that have been retired that now drop that red flame retardant. I'm thinking to myself, why do we got 3 when the entire state's burning down? $1 million mansions in Malibu and in Napa, California, just burning to the ground. You got 3 of these tankers out there. And eliminate fraud and waste by ending the Employee Retention Tax Credit Program. I ask you, my friends, the affordable housing is getting a boost by the passage of the tax relief credit. I just gave you every single one of the bullet points. Please let me know which one is going to help low-income families buy homes. I happen to think low-income families they have a right to. I think that housing is a right. It's an inalienable right that everybody has. I believe it. I'm for it 100%. I think we should finance it. I think we should subsidize it. Tell me, my friends, what you're looking at right now. This new bill that was just passed, it's going to be a talking point of every politician on a bully pulpit in the coming months up until November. Tell me, my friends, one thing in here that's going to bring home ownership closer to any underserved community or minority classes. Well, that was a lot of fun. And hey, listen, guys, in all honesty, this is a heck of a lot of fun for me to do this. And I hope what I'm doing is I'm bringing a little bit of levity over to you. I hope that I'm letting you know a little bit about what's going on in the industry. I hope this was helpful. If you find my videos helpful, do me a favor, share them. Take these topics that some people find maybe sometimes a little bit challenging, but use these as talking points. Disagree with me. Scream about why I'm wrong. But make sure that you put your opinion out there, because the more people we have coming up with their own solutions, we can then crowdsource actual solutions, and maybe we can hold our politicians and our state and federal representatives who are passing these laws, these rules, these regulations, allowing these lawyers to run amok with our industry and basically take advantage of everything for the benefit of Wall Street. Maybe we could do something about it, but it's not until we all start to think critically. You know, sometimes, as we say, we gotta take account for some of that stinking thinking that takes place between our ears. Listen, my friends, I hope this was helpful. Thank you for participating, and I will see you all again, hopefully, tomorrow.